This is Angela Blueskies from Heart of the Mother Retreats, and I am feeling so lucky today to be chatting with Eric Schwarz, all the way on the other side of the world in Australia. And Eric will be joining us, teaching yoga and meditation and probably lots of other beautiful things for the 2020 Heart of the Mother Retreat in the Sacred Valley of Peru. So Eric, thank you so much for taking this time to be with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Angela. I'm very excited to be part of the team and heading down to the Sacred Valley with everyone and doing some really deep and important work together.
Thank you for being a part of it. So can we start the conversation with you just sharing a little bit about your work and what you do and what you'll be bringing to the retreat?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is also more or less a story of how you and I met, because before living in Australia, I was a yoga teacher in Washington, D.C. And I led a number of retreats, a couple of which were in just around Harper's Ferry. And I think also I remember I was leading a teacher training and you were considered guest faculty. So you'd pop in and do some sound healing and kirtan and chanting with the group. And it was always a big hit. So when I was doing a retreat nearby where you lived, I asked you to come and join and play some beautiful music for us. The gong baths on Saturday nights were a delight. So I did that in DC, and when I wanted to shake things up in my life in a really dramatic way, I moved out here to West Australia, where I continue to teach yoga. I also do life coaching, and I do executive corporate coaching, and a little bit of consulting work using my background in organizational science and behavior, which is what I did before I was a yoga teacher. So on the retreat, I will be teaching some very, very gentle yoga. If you've taken my class or know a bit about me, kind of my style, mostly in DC, was really, really powerful, and that has a place and a time, and it's transformative, but I wouldn't call it wholly accessible. So what I'd like to offer people down on this retreat is a much more accessible form of yoga that would include modalities such as yin, trigger point release, roll and release. I might throw in some yoga nidra, some meditation, some breath work, just in general things that everyone can do and things that I know from personal experience will work well with and complement the process.
It sounds so wonderful. I wish we were going way sooner because
Me too.
I miss your beautiful classes. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the role that you believe yoga plays in connection with working with plant medicine, since that's really a big part of what we're visioning here together.
Okay. This could be a whole dissertation. I'll try and get the top level views. I think for a lot of people, and the numbers are showing that people in America and across certain parts of the Western world are becoming less and less religious. Church attendance is down. And to fill that void of connection with something other than kind of our small egoic self, a lot of people are turning more to yoga. I mean, yoga studios are popping up everywhere. Almost, you can't throw a stick without hitting a yoga teacher these days. And it's not for lack of demand. I mean, people are interested in and curious about it. And one of the reasons that people are going to yoga and not to step aerobics or body pump is because of some tapping into something greater. And they might not call it spirituality, but there's something shifting within them. Maybe it's just from the breath, but something is shifting, something unseen. And that work can take you so far, and it did for me. But I did this was my story, but I found myself plateau with that work and just kind of level out. And sitting with plant medicine helped me break through whatever barriers I had found in my practice. And it wasn't as if one erased or outshadowed or negated the other. I really found that the contemplative experiences that I'd had from yoga allowed me to get a lot more out of the medicine, out of the process. I was able to really sit with what was showing up and stay with it, and stay with it, even though it would have been so easy to look away. And it's in those moments that the real transformation happens, that the real healing happens, that the breakthroughs happen. And I distinctly remember just having this one memory of thinking, India was like my father, and this medicine was like my mother. So they were both guiding me in some way, but in different ways, but still guiding me.
That's really beautiful. And so having so much steeped in yoga for so many years now, and also coming to the work with plant medicine, and in particular ayahuasca, how have you experienced the two working together, in especially in bringing yoga to a retreat like the Heart of the Mother retreat in Peru? What is your vision for incorporating yoga into that work?
Mm-hmm. I have found more and more, I mean, I understood this to be from a factual perspective, but when you understand something on an experiential level, it completely changes your relationship with the idea. And it really had to do with how we hold different tension patterns in our body, and how that relates to different stories that we tell ourselves, or even just different relationships that we have in our lives, and how that affects our personality, so to speak. Some people know this as the chakras, and I saw it a lot as a yoga teacher, definitely. But in working with the two of these together, I just kind of saw it just so much more clearly, so much more pronounced. So I can give a bit more of a specific example. A really good one to understand is that of the throat, right? So you'll hear people say, like they feel a tightness around their throat, or they might not really even know there's a tightness around their throat because it's just a normalized experience for them. And they might have some kind of opening or energetic release around in a ceremony about how what they say matters, or how they've been holding back or sitting on some truth and not revealing it or not sharing it. And in working through that on the energetic level, they would then feel that on the physical level, more mobility around the neck, more mobility around the throat. They might even be able to sing more comfortably than they've been able to sing before. Mm. And that goes the other direction, I find, as well. So if you have enough body awareness, which you can develop through these techniques of where your tight spots are, which we normally don't know that they're there because we just organize our movement patterns around compensating for them. When we start to work on those, particularly when we're deep in medicine, that is already opening up the energy from the physical perspective, so that when you do go in to sit, there's more of a willingness in the whole experience and the whole process to move through that. I've also found that, for example, I could be rolling out my hip with a tennis ball or foam roller on just like any day of the week in my house, and my body being so incredibly unyielding. I do not want to let this go. I do not want to let this go. I do not want to let this go. But in applying the same practice, maybe the day after medicine, the body is incredibly forgiving and yielding and wants to release that. So I've been able to, and then that goes back and forth, right? So in this particular system that we've set up, it's yoga, ayahuasca. So I really think that just it's a process of excavating layer after layer after layer, in a way that really just informs each other synergistically. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, definitely, it does. And for those who may not be really aware, you spoke of yin yoga or even restorative yoga. Can you
Yes.
just say a little bit about those practices, which may not be as well known?
Yeah, okay. That's such a great question because yin yoga is super popular in West Australia and like no one goes to it in DC. And if once you understand what it is, you'll probably understand why. Yin yoga stems from Chinese medicine, so it has to do more with the feminine soft energy, where yang or yang yoga is really powerful and heating and very physical. So people in DC love to move and sweat and have almost a competitive mentality when they approach their yoga. So power yoga, hot power yoga, these are just incredibly popular in DC right now, and they're the complete opposite of yin. And they have their place, and I love them, and I teach them, and I practice them.
I would imagine they're probably popular all over North America because that
Yeah.
very external, very busy kind of uh, do as much as you possibly can all of the time energy is so prevalent
Mm-hmm.
at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yin is quiet. It's still. It's incredibly long holds. You use a lot of props. It's really about supporting your body and draping your body over these props in different shapes. And it's not about going as deep as you can. It's just about coming right to the beginning of your sensation. And it's working with the fascia tissue, which is what binds the muscle together. And all this research these days about fascia tissue is suggesting that it is potentially the source of a lot of um, physical problems, even digestive problems, even psychological problems, stress, trauma, like that we hold our body in our tissues. So yin targets the fascia tissues specifically in a really intelligent way. It also works with your Chinese meridian lines as well, but you don't need to know about that for it to work. It really just works on its own, and anyone can do it.
That's awesome. I love it. I have a dear friend that always says your issues are in your tissues. And I think that that really is in alignment with what you're sharing about just these practices of yoga alone. And certainly from what I have learned over the years in work with medicine, the issues are in your tissues. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the gifts of working with ayahuasca is the process of literally purging things physically, purging things mentally, purging things emotionally, purging
Mm-hmm.
things energetically, purging things spiritually. And so I think it's one of the things that I love so much about ayahuasca is that it moves through the body in a very palpable way and helps to clear those things. And I think sometimes people think that medicines such as ayahuasca lift you off the planet and out of your body and away and
Mm-hmm.
elsewhere. And that can happen sometimes. But in my experience, it also plants you firmly on the ground, firmly in your own body and yourself and who you are and where you've come from and where you're going. And one of the reasons we really want to bring these practices of yoga into this retreat is so that people not only go through those deep experiences of purging, but also then really come back to gentleness and presence with their own bodies. And this beautiful yoga that you're talking about, yin yoga, is so perfect for that because it derails that mental process that says, gotta do, gotta achieve, gotta keep going, gotta push.
Mm-hmm.
And it says instead, if I understand correctly, and please correct me if I'm not accurate, it just says, just be here and be held and be present and feel and
Mm-hmm.
let go.
Mm-hmm. You're 100% on. Yes, absolutely. Uh, I told this to a student of mine even just yesterday who was, curious about yin yoga, and he was ready for it. I could kind of tell. And he was a power student, and I warned him, like, you will probably struggle the first class. You will probably, from the first minute, want to run out the door, but stay with it. Stay with it, and that's the same instruction for meditation. I think Tara Brach says meditation training is like training your dog: sit and stay. Right? But when you do stay, there's the reward is completely worth it. There is that beautiful place of stillness, of peace, of being held, and for a lot of people, just kind of maybe realizing that their drama isn't as dramatic as they had thought it was.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if we can drop in a little deeper, and
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you might tell me a little bit about some of your experiences with the medicine ayahuasca. And I'm thinking in particular, just a few things that you have received from that work that have been really life-changing for you.
Mm. Okay. I think three kind of top level, even bullet points, and I'm always happy to go deeper, always, is the first one is it profoundly shifted me away from a multi-year depressive experience. I yes, that was probably the big one. I'm happy to further explore that. The other one was that it helped me to understand that my power, which I had been stepping away from for years and years, really had to do with my ability to connect with people one-on-one. So being a yoga teacher and being a group facilitator, like teaching in front of larger and larger groups, while it was more kind of superficial exposure, was effectively a way for me to create more distance and more space between myself and someone else. So rather than shying away from what I knew I was gifted at, which was holding space and really witnessing and seeing people, I'm now leaning into that.
Mm.
And I really feel like there's so much more for me to do there. So that's something I'm still curious and looking into. And kind of a third one was that having not talked to my mom or brother for years and years and years, I started talking to them again because of an experience that I had while sitting with ayahuasca. So it repaired some deep wounds in my family, or at least initiated the healing, and then I took it from there. And what I didn't expect at all from that was that I had also been struggling with constipation for years, and it didn't matter what I ate. And I had the cleanest, greenest diet. I was doing fiber supplements and walking and fit and like doing all of the things you're supposed to do that the doctor tells you to do when you go in and report constipation. There was actually a spiritual, emotional problem. So the moment I began to mend that relationship, my lower gates opened, and it's been wonderfully regular ever since. And that to me is just another example too of like this mind-body connection that we alluded to earlier, because your digestion is your first chakra, your lower chakra, and that is your sense of stability, your sense of place, your sense of belonging in your world. And what relationship more defines your belonging in this world than your relationship with your mother? That is the first relationship that you experience on this planet.
That's beautiful. And I think it's also beautiful that you shared about profound physiological shift that you had from this work, which is amazing. And relational shifts, both in family and I guess with community at large, and connecting, and then also in your relationship with yourself as you were working with shifting depression. Would you care to say a little bit more about that one?
Yeah. I don't know the roots of it. I think there were some experiences that shifted me many years ago in my 20s that led me to be more isolated in some ways. And I wouldn't say it was one in particular, but I would say an aggregation of several experiences. And I continued to shut down further and further and be further and further removed. But to be honest, when I was on medication, it was just normal. Like, oh, okay, this is my plan for now. And I found a psychiatrist who wasn't curious about excavating any source of my depression. And that was exactly what I wanted. And that was exactly what he wanted was to just keep medicating me. Eventually, something deep within me was saying, there's more to life here. You should get curious about what's out there. And that was contrasting with my desire to be as comfortable as possible. In other words, not uncomfortable. In other words, not looking in and seeing what was causing me to be depressed, to have panic attacks, to have anxiety. So in medicine, I just really very vividly remember a vision of, it's like a fast forward vision of 10 years of people reaching out to me and people offering me love and me just not taking it. And seeing that brought on a wave of sadness of all these people who'd reach out to me and me not reaching back, and how that would impact them, but also how it impacted me and what I missed out on from being isolated, and seeing that isolation as what had caused me to be depressed, but also seeing it was what allowed me to change and open my heart in that moment, from someone who didn't cry for years and years to someone who just in that moment purged through my tears, purged through my tears. Yeah.
That's
so I'm very, very grateful for that.
Really beautiful. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that medications can be so important and stabilizing for some people with certain challenges that they're facing, and yet some people do find that while they're really beneficial for a season, when used long term in the scope of one's life, it can really limit your capacity to really experience the full scope of human reality. And for those who are curious, who might be taking some kind of medication that is in the antidepressant, anti-anxiety category, those medications are in strict contraindication with this work, as they can be very dangerous. So that would be something to really look into with your medical provider fully before wanting to sign up for the retreat right away. So thank you for bringing that dynamic so openly to this conversation. I think there's a lot of stigma around taking medication as well, and some people feel like they shouldn't, and for some people it's really important, and then for some people it's really important to say, okay, thank you, and what is next for me? And so it's really exciting that that what was next is so deep in helping you to reconnect with that love. That's so beautiful.
Thank you. And you put that in a really compassionate way, which I truly appreciate. And yeah, for me and for a lot of people, that medication can be a lifeline. And like, let's be honest, people don't always live in communities where they have the support that they need to be mentally healthy. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, medication is the only option. And I don't blame them at all for pursuing that. I just wish that there was more support and love in this world.
Yeah, I feel that as well. And it's one of the things that in my years of working with ayahuasca that has been so deep and touching. It's almost as if this medicine brings community together in such a palpable way, through the navigation of really deep experiences that sometimes force us to face the darkest shit we've tried not to see for years. And we do that in community. We do that in a circle together in ceremony, with prayer and with song. And every single purge, every release is something to celebrate, because that's one more thing that won't be poisoning our hearts and minds. It's one more thing that we clear from the field so that we can be more fully honest and authentic and open in who we are. And that is what heals the world. That's just amazing.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Yeah. I heard someone earlier this week share the same sentiments that you're not just doing the work on yourself, you're doing the work on everyone in the room, just by being there.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the things that so much of the time we sit with inside of ourselves, maybe we don't want to look at them, but maybe they push their way in anyway. The things that cause us sorrow or frustration or confusion or fear, it can feel so isolating, as if nobody else ever has those experiences, because we don't talk about them. We try to hide them, we shove them aside and just try to keep going and being functional and having a happy face. But when we do allow those things to surface and breathe air instead of just being hidden, and then do the deep work with courage of facing them and letting those things move through. And then when we sit together and share honestly about what it is we're moving through, we all have the same shit. It may
Right.
manifest in different ways, different
Yeah.
expressions, but it's all in there. And what freedom comes even from just that acknowledgement that none of us are alone in these things. And we all have the ability to shift the things that don't allow us to live fully, and also to like really feel what we need to feel in order to move beyond them.
Mm. Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
I I'll save that story for another day. But you mentioned song, and I wanted to know, because this was curious to me. Before, I didn't really understand what it was about when I heard about it, but when I sat in ceremony, it made sense to me. But how does music and song play a role in ceremony?
That's such a great question. And I guess to me, it's like the music is like the life raft. Most people find that when they're in deep in this work, really facing the darkness and the challenges and the purges, it can be very destabilizing and uncomfortable. And the music is literally the lifeline that helps to pull everyone through. And so when I came to the medicine for the first time, like 12 years ago, I was a classical musician, and I had a whole career teaching and playing music. I'm a flutist originally. And in this first ceremony, I sat there and I felt like the music was the music of the angels. And these songs were so beautiful. I'd never heard them before, and yet I was singing them in harmony. And I had never been a singer before in my entire life. And I thought, oh my God, what's happening? This is crazy. But the music literally opens each person, mentally and emotionally and energetically and physically, in ways that are hard to describe until you've actually experienced it. One of the ways I like to describe it is that when we're in ceremony, we become porous, like a volcanic stone. You pour water on a volcanic stone, and it soaks in and it moves all through and around in such a thorough way, as opposed to like if you were to just pour it on a regular stone, it just goes over. So in ceremony, we become porous to all the different sounds and vibrations and messages and energies. And as that is carried in the music, it literally can help to shift things. And I know that in my experience, the songs and music that are happening in ceremony are almost always the exact thing that I need in the moment. And I hear the same thing from others when they go to ceremony, like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that song was like, it was meant for me. How could you possibly know? And it's just part of the greater mystery of how all of that works. Yeah, so music is essential in the ceremony. And the original tradition from the Amazon works with medicine songs in traditional languages called icaros. And in our retreats, we have some icaros, but we also really welcome spiritual music from traditions from all over the world. And as well as sometimes there are people who are sitting in ceremony that have their own original medicine songs. So we may have songs in 10 or 15 different languages in a single ceremony. And some of the songs may be familiar and some of them may be completely new, but they're all meant to be medicine themselves. Thank you so much for asking that question. I feel like that's such an important and sometimes surprising aspect of the work.
Yeah. As you say that, it makes me reflect on my relationship with music and song. even before ceremony and prior to experiencing ayahuasca. And one of the things I really struggled with when I was leading teacher training was kirtan. I just had no calling to do it. I was just kind of like, all right, you know, it's part of yoga. I have to do it. But I didn't really get a lot out of it. And that had to do with my greater feelings of disconnection and isolation. But in terms of enjoyment of the ceremony, the songs are it. You know, it's a very satisfying and uplifting experience to hear the music, and also can be a soothing lifeline, like you said. But it has changed my relationship with song. It has changed my relationship with music, and now I enjoy singing. I enjoy song. I enjoy lyrics, and I've let go of a lot of like the super stimulating electronic music, which still has a time and place. And like on an odd day, I enjoy it and get into it. But for the most part, what's piping around in my car, around my house, is songs that I connect to in a more spiritual level, that fill my soul up.
Yeah, I think that was a big thing for me too, because before I came to the medicine work, my whole life is music. I've been doing that since I was a child, but I stopped really listening to music as anything other than study. I didn't listen to music for my enjoyment, because honestly, I just liked the silence. So the rest of my life was music. But when I first started to be exposed to these healing songs and medicine songs and ikaros, I found that there was something that my whole life had been missing. And that as a musician, I'd literally been from the chin up for years. And there's this deeper whole body, whole emotional spectrum sense that music could bring. And so I remember those first 6 months after ceremony, I listened to nothing but medicine songs.
Yeah.
And some of them had been recorded live in ceremonies with puking in the background. And and my friends who weren't used to that were like, "What are you listening to? What is that?" And I had to explain usually before exposing them to the songs. But I was like, "No, this is the only known recording of this song. We have to hear this one." And so now, I mean, my whole life has changed personally through working with this medicine. I eventually let go of my career as a classical musician and opened the door for spirit and the path to reveal itself. And now I find myself a ceremonial musician and a sound healer and a facilitator of all things connected to sound and vibration. And when I reflect back on my days as a classical musician, you know, I was accomplished and respected and bored. And now I know that when I am sharing my music with people, whether I am singing in a ceremony or whether I am bringing music to people in a sound healing session, I know that the whole context is different. And it's awesome for me too, to expose people to a completely different way of being with music that isn't about entertainment. Like, I have no more capacity inside of myself to experience music as entertainment. And that seems like such a shallow possibility for the depth that is available. And so I enjoy music way more than I did for most of my life now, which is really cool.
It is. And how ancient is music, since we're talking about it? And not only ancient, but like how important it is to the historical experience of humans. Music wasn't invented in India or Europe and then exported to the rest of the world. Music independently was discovered or embraced by humans independently all over the planet. I don't know that there's any culture without some form of music. And it's what your mom sings to you when you're sick, when she's giving you a bath. You know, and I think a lot of ancient cultures just have music as part of their daily life. a song for this, a song for that, make up this, sing this together,
Yeah,
sing this while you're walking. And we don't really have that as much right now in the culture that we live in. So there's, you're missing it, but a lot of people don't even know they're missing it.
yeah,
And this experience reconnects you to something deep and ancient within you that goes back thousands of years.
absolutely. And I love that you brought in this image of like a mother singing to her child, because sometimes in ceremony, that's what it feels like. Yes.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
divine mother singing to all of her children as they go through something really hard. Um, yeah, so beautiful. Um,
Let me ask you, Angela,
uh-huh.
who who should opt out of sitting in a ceremony? Who would not be a good candidate for going to Peru and sitting with ayahuasca?
That is such a great and important question. Um, and so I will reflect back to our conversation about medications. There are some medications that are strict contraindication with this work. A lot of pharmaceuticals require short suspension, but not a really long one. But the classes of drugs such as SSRIs and MAOIs and other drugs for things like ADD and ADHD, these kind of medications that are used in an ongoing way affect the body in a way that requires them to, you need to be able to suspend them for at least 3 months. So someone who can't do that is not a good fit for this work. Um, People who are struggling through mental and emotional challenges that don't have a strong support system in place are also probably not a good fit for this work. Um, and the thing that I can't say strongly enough is that while the retreat in Peru and the ceremonies that we experience there are a catalyst for tremendous personal transformation, um, it's really important to know that the ceremony unlocks the door, and
Mm,
then you go back out into your life, whatever it looked like before the retreat, and you still have to face all of those things. So it's really important to have supports in place, whether that is uh, through your family or through your community or through um, having a great therapist or other support person in your life. Super important to have those things in place so that if you go back home and all of a sudden you've seen the light and everything around you doesn't fit anymore, you're able to navigate through that in a way that feels stabilizing and not
mm,
destabilizing. Um, I would say that those are really the big ones for people who aren't really a good fit for it. There are probably also a number of health conditions that aren't a good fit, but those would be something that we would have to consider on a case-by-case basis, because we've had people in lots of interesting health situations come and work
mm.
with us in Peru, and it's all okay. We had an amazing woman who was struggling with Alzheimer's uh,
Oh,
and
wow.
came with her husband, and she literally couldn't remember anyone's name or where her room was. But her husband wanted her to do this work to try to help her with anxiety and dealing with her memory loss and her loss of autonomy. And it was super edgy work, but we had a really strong team of people who were able to help her navigate that in a way that was fierce and beautiful. So um, I would say for anyone whose heart is called to this work, it would be worth a conversation at the very least, because we want to make it available to anyone who's ready to really show up for the work, and who it will be safe for. I guess the last group of people I would say it's probably not appropriate for are people who just want a quick fix in their life. This work is not for the faint of heart.
Mm,
It's not like a drug trip at all. It is a deep, profound, life-altering, awakening experience that can rip away every one of our security blankets and veils and
mm,
layers of long-standing protection. And for someone who just wants to make their life get better instantly, poof, come home from Peru well and good and solid, that doesn't happen.
mm,
And so I think it's really important to just acknowledge that, like, this is a process that is deep and certainly life-changing, and it requires the willingness to show up for that without any timeline, without any agenda other than transformation.
mm.
Is there any group of people that you would add to that, Eric?
There is a group of people that I don't know if I would add or not, and I actually kind of want to get your thought on that, um, which would be those who really, 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 really struggle with taking a good hard look at themselves, and who would struggle to sit with what it is that they see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that really depends on the person.
Mm,
Resistance is normal. We all have it.
yeah.
I think most of those of us who grew up in the Western world have a strong desire to be in control of our lives and possibly other people's lives too.
Mm,
And those are things that we have to face in this work. Like being a control freak, as many of us are, like
yeah.
makes it hard because this is an experience where we hand over our control to something that is bigger than us and say, okay, show me. And
Mm,
the people who struggle the most in that work are the people who aren't willing to surrender. And so, I think that would be something that each person who might be curious would want to do a little reflecting with. Like, I want to change. I'm willing to change. I'm going to look at the things that keep me from changing.
mm,
And then I'm going to follow through. Like, that's really an important series of steps because there's no way out. There's no way around. Um, and I think spiritual bypass is something that happens sometimes for people who they want to get to the goods, but they don't want to do the dirty work
mm,
that it takes to get there.
yeah.
So yeah, you got to be willing to look at yourself and see your beauty. Absolutely, a lot of this work is about seeing the beauty that we are, seeing the love that we are, being kinder and more gentle with ourselves, loving ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes Mother Ayahuasca has to give us a little tough love. It's like, look at the way you keep doing the same thing over and over again. Look at how you close yourself off. Oh, yeah. That's hard sometimes to see when we've told ourselves for years, I'm good. I'm great. I'm fine. In the background, maybe there's another story that's playing. And so it can be really
Yeah.
good to excavate that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I mean, what I'm hearing from you too is like, we're going to take a look at all of you, the parts that you don't want to see that are challenging, and also the parts of you that are beautiful that you have yet to see or that you haven't checked in with in a while. Because you
Totally.
can't choose selectively. Uh, but I think also about the bit that I asked about. Uh, Chances are, if you are going on this journey with us, you will have done some research and done some reflection, and you will, on some level, be ready to have that deep dive inside.
Absolutely. And that's something that we even begin the question process in the registration online. Um, what is your intention for being here? What do you want to work on? Like, what are the things that you would like to heal? And also, like, what are the practices that you bring to this work? What is your background? What does your spiritual path already look like? What does your personal growth path already look like? Because all of those things are really good. Sometimes people come to this work with no practices, no background in how to do personal growth work. And fortunately, we share a lot of those kind of things in the retreat. We have daily meditations and also integration sessions after every ceremony where we share different things that people can use to help kind of anchor in. But it can be challenging if you have never done any kind of personal growth work and all of a sudden your world is upended and then what?
Yeah.
But I think that's also one of the gifts of being on the retreat is that we have a team of 4 of us who are well-versed in lots of ways to support people. And we want to make sure that every person who comes and starts to, light up and also clear
Mm,
out things knows how to keep walking that path gracefully with support.
mm. Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful. Mhm. One of the fundamental tenets of Ayurveda, which is the sister science to yoga in India, is that, and it's all about, Ayurveda is all about balance, balance when you're healthy to stay healthy. And if you're sick, it's because you're out of balance. It's like, it says, no matter how much balancing you do, the thing that is going to help you the most is to be grounded in community.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Mm.
That's beautiful. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring to our conversation today?
I think that is it for this conversation. It's been a robust conversation. I've learned a lot from you, and I think this information will be really useful to anyone who tunes in.
Beautiful. Well, I thank you so much for being available to take this time and to share your own perspective and about your path and your work and all the magic that you'll be bringing to the retreat. And for anyone who's interested in finding out more about the retreat, you
Mm.
can find us online at www.heartofthemotherretreats.com. You can also find us on Facebook under the same name, Heart of the Mother
Mm.
Retreats. And as of right now, we have a special until the end of 2019. For anyone who signs up by the end of the year, there's $200 off registration. So this is definitely the time to act on it if you are feeling your heart's call to come to the motherland in Peru and begin this journey. Eric, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Angela. Always great to chat.